Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 321 for the 14th of Tishrei in a leap year. Do you ever go to the supermarket and have a list of groceries that you need to buy, but then somehow or another find yourself in a totally different section of the supermarket that has nothing to do with your list, and you start getting lost in whatever is there, whether it's chocolate or snacks or interesting new foods or something like that? Does that ever happen to you? I'm guessing yes, right? This happens to most people. Or if it doesn't happen to you, then perhaps this happens in other areas of your life where you set out to do a certain thing and then somehow along the way you get distracted. Distraction is a very common thing that happens to most of us in life, maybe some of us to a higher extent than others, but I really think this is a part of life. And in fact, this is so much a part of life that, as we'll learn, we are constantly faced with the biggest distraction of all, namely the distraction of our physical bodies and our physical concerns and all of these things which distract us from our ultimate purpose of why we're here, why our soul came down here to this earth. So once upon a time, before we were born, each one of us, our souls, was brought down into this world with a very specific mission that was endowed to it. And this mission was conscious to us at some point in our existence. But then in being born, we underwent a process of forgetting, and we became entrapped here in this physical body, in this state of what we know of as exile. And we became subject to the needs and wants of the physical body. And in fact, the needs and wants of the physical body are not to be totally ignored. They're actually very necessary for us to fulfill our mission here. And this was, in fact, the answer that I kind of, gave you in the spoiler yesterday when we were discussing this issue that had come up that the Alter Rebbe was pointing out of the Chassidim coming to him with all kinds of worldly matters and worldly concerns and being very upset by this and telling them not to come to him with these things, that's not what he was there for. He was there to help them for spiritual matters, but not for physical matters, and physical matters was not supposed to be his realm. And yet we see that throughout the ages, the Chassidim continued to come to the Alter Rebbe with these physical concerns and these physical matters. And so we were saying, what's the deal with all of this? And we spoke about how, in fact, at the end of the day, deep down, all of our physical concerns and all of our physical worries and all of that stuff, it really is coming from a spiritual place. Because truly, ultimately, the deepest desire of a Jew is to serve God. So if we want food, or if we want livelihood, if we want children, if we want a spouse, all of these things, the deepest reason why we want these things is really ultimately in order to serve God, to make a Jewish home, to eat kosher, all of these things. Nevertheless, there is a problem with consciousness here, because while this might be the truth deep down, it's very easy for us to get distracted from this deep down, from this deeper mission that we have. And in coming down into the world, the deepest part of our soul knows its mission, knows what it's all about, knows what the point of the physical body is, what the point of the physical world is. It's very, very easy and tempting to get distracted. Just like when you go into the supermarket, you enter into the supermarket, you know fully what you're there for, you know what you came to get, but somehow or another, next thing you know, you end up in the chocolate aisle when you actually had no intention to be there at all, right? I mean, the same thing happens often when people go on vacation, that they're going there on vacation, and in the beginning, the first day or so, they really feel like a foreigner. It's very apparent that they're different, that they're a tourist. They're not like the people there. But the longer a person stays in that environment, the more they start to acclimate, the more they start to behave like the people who live there. Sometimes people start to adopt the accents of the people who live in that town, in that country. So today's Tanya is going to be addressing this point. In today's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is going to first of all acknowledge this reality that he's very much aware that when people are coming to him with these physical needs, with these physical requests, it's coming from a good place deep down, because ultimately it is in order to serve Hashem, and he knows that, and he's giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. Nevertheless, he's also acknowledging the fact that we are human beings and that living on this physical earth, it's very easy to be distracted from our mission, and he's very aware that people sometimes get bogged down with these physical things, and that they get distracted from the fact that these physical things are here to help us serve God, and people begin to get caught up in physicality for the sake of physicality itself, which that is the negative part. That's something that we need to try to overcome. So with that being said, let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this. It's a pretty short section today, and for context, we are in the middle of Epistle 22 of Iggeres HaKodesh. So the Alter Rebbe begins, and he says, in truth, he says, I will tell those people that are listening to me that love upsets the regular order of conduct. In Hebrew, this is a citation from the Midrash, Bereshis Rabbah, chapter 55, paragraph 8. Where and he says that the love covers the eyes, right? Like love is blind. This is a common phrase that people say, meaning that love conceals a person from seeing the truth. So what do people love? What is he talking about here? He says through people loving the life of their bodies. And yes, this love of their bodies is for the sake of heaven, in order to serve God with their bodies. He is acknowledging this, and that they want to do this with very passionately, with a fiery flame, a flame that's very great, in order to have their souls be really love God. So the Alter Rebbe is saying basically that he's acknowledging the fact that yes, people love their bodies ultimately in order to love God, in order to have this passionate, soulful love for God. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe also sees that people become very upset, very angry when their body is suffering, God forbid. And God should indeed show compassion, he says, for this. So we shouldn't experience suffering. But nevertheless, he says people do become upset when they experience physical suffering, and they're not able to accept it at all, to the point that they start going, it starts making them lose their minds. And this causes them to start going from city to city to look for advice in very far places. So it's like kind of like you can picture somebody who is like really in a desperate state, and they're experiencing suffering, God forbid. And it's like in that kind of desperate state, a person isn't necessarily thinking logically, and they're just kind of like running around trying as hard as they can for somebody to help them. They're like, help me. And it's like, they'll just like ask whoever they can to help them. And they're looking for answers. And what they're not doing, what's the problem with this, is they're not turning and returning to God with a humble spirit and through submission of the body to receive God's rebuke with love. And they fail to acknowledge the fact that God actually rebukes those that he loves. This is a verse from Mishlei, chapter 3, verse 12. Ki et asher yahiv Hashem yuchiach. For God chastens, or God rebukes the one that he loves. So this is where the section ends today. So just to bring it together. So basically the Alter Rebbe is basically saying here that while he does acknowledge the fact that truly this love of the body that people have is coming from a good place, it's coming from the place of wanting to serve God, and we know that we need to serve God with our bodies, nevertheless, people get distracted, and people get so caught up in their bodies that they don't accept the suffering of their bodies with love, and they start looking for all kinds of different ways to alleviate their suffering, when in fact what they should be doing is they should be accepting this suffering with love and realizing that this suffering is coming about from God because God loves them. And they should be returning to God. They should use this opportunity to do tshuva, to return to God and to humble themselves before God. So that's it for today. So the bottom line lesson is to kind of keep perspective, to remember what your priorities are in your life in a deep way, in an existential way. So not only when you go to the supermarket or when you're walking down the street to go to a certain place and not get too distracted. But here on earth too, we're here for a mission, and it's okay to be physical. It's okay to have physical needs and wants and desires and all that stuff. It's very normal and natural, especially because we need these things in order to serve God. But at the same time, to not get so caught up in physicality that it is the physicality that you begin to worship, God forbid, and not God himself. So that's it for today, and we will continue along these lines tomorrow, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.